You're listening to Coffee, Chaos, and ProdSec. I'm Cameron, the AppSec and DevSecOps builder, trying to automate things, do things with security. I built multiple programs and had a great time doing it. I got Kurt here with me, a battle-tested security architect with zero trust worldviews. We turn real-world chaos. Stop shaking your head at me. into conversation. You
Trust
broke
no
me.
one.
You broke me.
I broke you. It's all right. It's fun.
Grab your coffee and let's get into it. So this is part 2. We had a great time in the last session. It was a long one. That one, I don't know,
Fun.
unedited was like 110. So it was that 1 hour and 10 minutes. It was a good time. We talked a lot about a bunch of different things, right? We talked about reachability. We talked about false positives. We talked about noise, the life cycle of vulnerabilities in general. Had a great conversation, I would say. A lot of strong opinions around vulnerability assessments and vulnerability management. EPSS, EPSS, man, or sorry, the CVSS. Oh my gosh, words, acronyms, hard. EPSS, Kev. We talked about a bunch of other things. The best part is we had a lot of hot takes, a lot of strong opinions. One could say so many strong opinions that they could break a threat model in half. So
do it every day.
Yeah. Kurt, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I got coffee. I'm mellow right now. The caffeine is still working its way into my system.
That's fair. It's fair.
I know we had a sip.
Yeah, I need it. A little tired. Getting the day going, getting the things going. Excited for this. You know, especially to break into the next part of what we're going to be talking about today, which is AI, right? How AI works around this. Maybe some CVSS politics or vulnerability. I don't know. We can see where we get around that. The deep pains around the tools, a lot of the cool tools that we're maybe seeing in the market or changes we're seeing in the market, and then wherever kind of it takes us. But I don't know. Do we want to recap a little on any key points from the last episode?
I think the biggest thing is, it's my opinion, which I know you didn't ask for, but I'm giving it anyway, because that's what we're here for. Yep. In vulnerability management today is broken. I think we beat that to death quite a bit yesterday. And the reachability and exploitability piece always stands out for me. And I think there's a lot of people that we see talking about this, especially right now with some of the craziness that's happening in the world with the latest and greatest O-Day. But we have to evolve. Vulnerability management needs to change, and it is changing. And how do we change it for the better? We start focusing on reachability and building on that with true exploitability. And AI is obviously helping us evolve faster as an industry. And that's what we're going to go get into today.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, NIST, NVD. NVD has, by the end of this year, I was doing a little math, little calculations. It's going to be somewhere around everything consistent around 400 or 4,600 vulnerabilities just this year that they've cataloged and put into their system. It's a lot. 47,000. Numbers are hard. All right.
We might see another 4,700 this month.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And with that massive amount of volume and noise, to recap kind of what we were talking before, we only see it was like maybe 3 or 4% of them actually have true known exploits or payloads or known exploits. Sure, we don't know if other vulnerabilities are being exploited, but it is a great metric to track and know. So with all that, I mean, it's a massive volume. There's a lot of noise. We're seeing teams swell. I know in my LinkedIn post, I have been having a lot of great conversations today with a lot of different people talking about how, from all different perspectives, that the time from detection is getting smaller or longer in ways, right? Like the one that we just had, the React vulnerability. That one was actually pretty quick in terms of everybody getting to know, but in terms of getting into the tools and the tools having the identifier, there are some tools that took more than 24 hours. And this exploit is kind of like, I mean, I'm not going to say 100% on the same level, but the exploit path is very similar to like Log4j in that once it's verified that you're vulnerable to that app, or so the attacker finds out, right? They can execute code on there with that's at whatever privilege they want. So you're
Yep.
essentially owned with that. And if your tools, the vendors you're relying on, are taking 24 hours to get that in their system so that you can detect that, that's crazy, right? The window is getting
It's just
smaller
a
from,
sitting duck.
yeah, you're sitting ducks. So like you're from 0 days, you're getting smaller windows of exploitability, right? Or of known that you're vulnerable to it. And then the time to remediation is even smaller there too. It's all compounding, right? It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I know everyone comes out and they're like, "Well, the big vendors and the cloud service providers, they put a WAF rule in place, which is just like a band-aid, right? Web application firewall. Let's try to catch it in flight and stop it before it hits our apps until the fix gets out. So they try to buy you time, but even then, it takes them hours to a day to put that out, right? And it's not necessarily going to be 100% guarantee that it protects you. So it's nice that all of the vendors try to do this, and assuming you're using one of them and can actually apply that rule. But the sheer reality is, like, it's not automatic. Like, you actually have to take an active role in something like this. And when you see it, like we see POC code out on the internet within 24 hours, it's actively being exploited by nation state level actors in that same amount of time. It's crazy. And I mean, if you're a sitting duck for even 48 hours, they found some, I think I saw a statistic, they found somewhere just shy of 1 million systems that had this problem.
Yeah.
And that's just with what they could scan in that time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was reading some posts on LinkedIn, people posting that they're seeing activity like from nation states actively
Yes.
exploiting this now too. So it is a crazy world that we're in. And for us security professionals, it is a crazy time. I know from my countless perspectives and times I've built different programs, I've reached out to a lot of friends. At least this one vulnerability, everybody's swarming and trying to get done, does not even talk about the massive amount that we have to get done and how much work we have to do in general. But before all that, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, 5 stars, smash the smash, and listen to our next episode. We release every Wednesday. Kurt, question for you. On part one, what is the key or one takeaway that stuck with you? I would say all week, but we just recorded that episode yesterday. We're trying to stock up on, get these episodes a little out quicker and on time. So, what was the one thing that stuck with you?
I mean, I think I already kind of alluded to it, right? So I think the one of the biggest takeaways from that previous discussion is the exploitability conversation that so many of us are starting to have, whether it's our public postings on LinkedIn or conversations like this, or behind closed doors at whatever company you work at. It's exploitability is what matters. You cannot fix every stinking vulnerability. Compliance is broken and needs to stop aiming for that. Focus on what truly matters, what's a real risk, and that's the ones that are truly exploitable.
Yeah. Yeah. And compliance frameworks, in a way, I think need to start talking about risk in that, or these vulnerabilities, that they are risk. And you need to establish a risk based approach to vulnerability management.
Yes.
And when you apply that risk-based vulnerability, like somewhere in there it should say you're allowed to reclassify risk from maybe a critical to a medium or a low, right? Like you should be
Yeah.
able to do that. I know I can't remember which framework, but they're like you can only bring it down one severity. I don't think that's theoretically the best.
Um,
You should be able to bring it
no.
much lower.
I think something like that's probably trying to prevent people from gaming the system, though, right?
Yeah.
Because someone's going to get crafty and say, well, I'm just going to turn everything into a low and I don't have to address it on
Yeah.
any sort of crazy timeline, right? Which that's not fair. And I mean, frankly, people that try to do that should be fired because they're only doing damage. They're not actually helping the situation. And honestly, I think most people have the right intent and they're just trying to do the right thing, and so don't limit anyone to one level or whatever. It's instead, you need to illustrate that you have a mature process and you can show the evidence of why you lowered the risk level on that vulnerability. If you can show that audit trail like you do in everything else when it comes to compliance audits, then change it however you want. In some cases, you're going to make a medium a high or a critical
Yep.
because you have a real exposure or it's being exploited and you're in that class that is truly exploitable.
Yep.
So it goes both ways. And like I said, I think people are generally trying to do the right thing in this industry with the time and resources they've got. So don't put weird rules like that in place. Instead, make sure that the process is mature and it actually works.
Yeah. Yeah. There's one thing, and I know I want to wait to say it, but I'm going to forget 100%. And I love that you brought up that it goes both ways, because I'm constantly like, I know when I was rolling out my risk based, assessment process, I was talking to my devs about it, and they were like, "So this is only going to, reclassify vulnerabilities downward." And I was like, "No, sir,
Nope.
no, sir. These vulnerabilities may go up." And they're like, "But why would you do that?"
It's
Because
crazy
there's
talk.
actual risk. Again, the whole point of
Yeah.
this program is about reducing risk. Yes, majority of vulns will go down, but a medium will go to a high. That is going to happen. I promise you. A low might go to a medium. This is why we're building this program out, and we're redoing this, and we're taking all these data points to build something complex and intuitive and that is data driven. It can't go one way. We have to build our programs that think in both ways, that risk can go down and risk can go up. And we have to make sure that we're remediating risk at the end of the day, which is something that a lot of vendors that I've seen don't really do that, right? Majority of their focus is downward. I really want to know what's going upward. The other thing is there's a lot of as like NVD updates and goes through their processes and things. Some vulnerabilities do go upward in that their severity from the original classification to when it gets like revised, finally revised and classified as like truly what it is. I've seen some vendors where they didn't update their platform, so it was a medium, but then it went into my risk-based approach, and based off our threat intelligence, which is constantly running, increased it to a critical, and the team was like, "This is a medium." And I was like, "Why? That's a good question." And then I went and go looked and followed the tool, the whole chain of it, and got into the vendor and was like, "Wait, this is a critical now." Message the vendor, and they're like, "Oh wow, yeah, that's crazy. This doesn't happen. We don't have a process for this." That's crazy. Like, what do you
Like, how
mean?
did it happen then?
Yeah, yeah. I understand that it's not a common process, but it could totally happen. Something could get misclassified. And in this
Right.
era of where like NVD and CISA and all these different, industry backbone platforms that help us manage and handle and source all our vulnerability information, as they are struggled to be funded or their operations become slower, this is something that I could totally see continues to happen. It's pretty interesting. And then I think the other thing that I again I'm gonna forget, and I want to say it now, is that a lot of vendors all have their own research teams, and they all are
Yep.
building their own proprietary research databases. And I really like that, but at the same time, I don't like it, because now we have, every vendor has their own source of truth, and no one's talking to one another. And at the end of the day, what are we trying to do? We're trying to reduce risk. It would be really nice if every vendor, like, if all this stuff was like much more partnership, collaboration. In an
Yeah.
ideal world, that's what it would be.
It's like it's kind of it moves to the direction of like open source, right? Like there's a methodology and you weigh different factors differently, you process data differently. But if everyone can do that consistently, and it takes that out of the equation to say like we're better, vendor A is better than vendor B because their threat intel is better because their research team is better. Like I get that it kind of gives you a competitive edge in some sense, and it's like we're gonna win business that way. But at the same time, it's like, are you actually helping, or are you just like you might be holding back somewhere and hurting people in the process? And now, like switching vendors is not easy. Talk to any practitioner, and it takes months to
Yeah.
switch a vendor out, at least. Or sometimes you got to turn one on and leave it running for a year so that you can slow roll off the other one. Like there's
Yeah.
no clean way to always do this, and sometimes the methodology changes. Now my process has to change, or like there it's going to impact the program much broader.
Yeah.
And it's like, can't we all just get along?
The other frustrating, total side tangent, grinds my gears segment. We got to talk about coffee, so don't forget. But grinds my gears is that when you move off like all the AppSec, most platforms, your catalog of false positives gone.
Gone.
Literally gone, because there's
Go do
no
it
good
over.
way.
It's easy, right?
You have to go do it over again, right? And then guess what? Because every vendor scans differently. There's a whole new set of false positives that didn't show up in the other tool because nobody has no vendor has perfect coverage. It's not like every single vendor is doing perfect coverage and detecting everything that's true. In an ideal world, that would be, but oh man, that is one of the most frustrating things. And I constantly, the other thing is crazy. If you just move your code base from one source code to another, so you went from GitHub to GitLab, most vendors treat that as a completely different repo. It is the same repo, guys. It's the same code.
Same code.
If I do it in the same minute, say I move that repo and then scan it right away and upload it, it's still treated as a completely different code base. I have to somehow figure out to port the false positives. Most tools don't have a good way to do that. It is a pain. We have to like write our own custom scripts that hammer the APIs. Awful.
Yeah.
Vendors, if you're out there, I know it's maybe not the best, but it is good and good customer service to build processes that allow us to at least move false positives within and triage findings from one project to another, as well as a way to integrate or import false positives from other tools, especially if I'm going to another vendor. I've had so many vendors that I'm like, yeah, you can come here, but we can't take false positives from there. I'm like, what if I export them via the API and get all this stuff? They're like, yeah, we have no way to ingest it. Come on,
Like,
help me
let
out
me give
here.
you a CSV file that says repo
Yeah,
and vulnerability number, and like we're
line
done.
XYZ, right? Like, come on, it would be
Like the
so
metadata
nice.
we already have, it should be
Yeah,
portable.
yeah. All right. Most important question of the podcast, Kurt. What are you drinking?
I don't remember what beans I put in the coffee machine like a week ago. All I know is it was like, I think it's a bold coffee, so it could be that blue bottle coffee that I like so much. It could be something else, but it's a medium roast, and yeah, it's caffeine, man. It tastes good. It's good quality coffee. I did one of the coffee subscriptions, so in the next episode, I'll probably have a real fancy coffee. I got one from Portland, your future
Nice.
home.
Yeah.
Um, like 2 days ago. I know I sent you a picture of it, so I'm excited for that one. But we'll get there. We'll talk about that one when we get there. Cross that bridge when we get to it. What are you drinking?
My drinking. Well, I'm drinking the good old Mr. Brown. It's the Blue
That's
Mountain
the color of
Blend.
coffee.
Yeah, iced coffee ready to drink. When we
Wait,
get these videos on YouTube,
you
you'll be able to
actually be able to
see.
see it.
You'll be able to see it. It's really good. I did do a splash of peppermint because why not? It's holiday season. It's
Yeah,
delicious.
and the wife goes through the trouble to make the syrup. Man, you got to take
Yeah,
advantage of
gotta
it.
take advantage of it, right? Yeah. That's one vulnerability I do not want to have. So, I make sure I have that syrup in every coffee.
Oh,
Yeah.
all
All
right.
right.
I'm ready. Let's
Into
get
the
the
first
hot takes
segment. Yeah.
rolling.
Yeah. So, I mean, the first part we kind of wanted to talk about was why vulnerability tooling is kind of in a bad place. And this is going to rile me up because I was just talking with a vendor about it today.
We also already started talking about
It's
this.
true. It's true. But I'm just going to quick fire it, right? A
All right,
lot
let's
of
do
these
it.
tools have inconsistencies in all detections in general. Maybe they don't all, a lot of your vendors maybe not cover all CWE categories, common weakness enumeration, I believe it is. You
Yep.
can double check me on that. Categories, that's the CWEs are like the unique patterns that all vulnerabilities in general come from. So usually a CVE may be a combination of CWEs. That's usually how it goes. Leaving myself some room there to be wrong because, sometimes you forget things when you're
Up for debate.
talking. Yeah, I don't know if it's up for debate. I'm pretty sure that's right.
I
they
think it's
lack
right.
they lack configuration, and that's one of the big things. A lot of these tools, they just say, here's the data, here's the severity, good luck. But again, as we said in the last
Good luck. Have
podcast,
fun.
yeah, it makes no sense. So you can't categorize, you can't triage, you can't handle these vulnerabilities and contextualize them within the platform. You have to usually do something else. There's usually gaps of like vulnerability states on when it was, usually they have when it's detected, but sometimes they don't say when it was changed, or this is a
Last
reoccurring
updated.
vulnerability. Yeah, last updated. Whether do they routinely pull from the source and update what they have, right? Sometimes there's no way to assign the vulnerability to somebody in the platform. There's no life cycle. I've worked with plenty of platforms where they're just like, here's the vulnerability. Guess what? You can't mark it as false positive. You can't accept the risk. You can't do anything. All you can do is mitigate it. And I'm like, but that's not the reality we live in. Your
Yeah,
tool is and these
half
like
baked.
the companies I've looked at too are like massive, just massive industry leaders, and I still just can't wrap my head around it. It makes sense why some of their competitors do have that, and they're consuming the business left and right. Um, there's no real good retesting windows. These tools fail silently. So from they may not even detect certain things within your tooling. Again, we talked about in that first one. A lot of these tools, in theory, they're supposed to detect. And guess what? A lot of modern tools do have massive gaps, and then they fail silently. Don't even tell you. That is the most
Yeah,
frustrating. I am constantly telling them, when I onboard a new tool, they're like, "Hey, we're onboarding it. Everything's great." I'm like, "I'm gonna write a script that double checks all this," and they're like, "Why are you gonna do that? We don't need to do that." And then we run it. And I'm like, "Hey, you have all these gaps," and they're like, "How did that happen?" And I'm like, "I don't know. How did it happen, sir?"
it's you didn't want me to check. Well, I just found it.
Well, I mean, I think they're
How
genuine.
else am I supposed to trust the tool?
We're in security, right? You trust but verify, and so I
We just
always
got through
trust.
saying how I have a zero trust mentality, like following me everywhere.
It's so true. It's so true. I mean, I could go on. I don't know, Kurt. You got any?
I mean, you're getting me riled up, and it's all a lot of the same stuff. Like you give me a half baked solution. Like I'm trying to use technology to make my life easier, but you're making it more complicated in a way. You're getting me part of the way there, and now I got to go build something else to fill the gap because I'm locked into a contract and I don't have budget to go buy another thing. Right.
It's true.
So I want a complete solution that lets me have the flexibility to do all the things I want to do and actually manage. Like, I'm sorry, mitigate is not the only option when we're talking vulnerabilities. Like
It's true.
we beat this to death yesterday. We're gonna do it again today. There are multiple paths you can take here, and you don't necessarily have to care about every stinking thing.
Yeah.
So why is mitigate the only option?
It's true. It's true. Beyond the things that you listed, I listed, I've seen these tools, they have poor APIs. So I can't actually pull the information out and contextualize that. I usually have to do undocumented APIs. And the reason I bring this up is today, or all week, or the last couple of weeks, I do this every year. I try to put together all my team's accomplishments. Leaders out there, if you don't do this, you should always do that. I say it's like the 2025, state of my eternal teams and what did we accomplish this year. As we close things out, I keep a track. I track all those things, and I had been doing that, and so I put my giant list together, and I started looking over my list. And I would say 50% of that list was automation on all my tools and improving them,
Yeah.
doing things, shifting things, because we saw all we were doing. Everybody was doing these repetitive tasks, or they need to pull the information to sync it with another tool, but how that tool syncs isn't that great. So we need to supplement what they're, syncing bi-directional syncs do. The Jira ticketing systems are garbage, so we had to supplement that. It's just one thing after another. So these tools, just from a fundamental perspective, are just not that mature for teams today. And a lot of teams just don't have the time, right? I'm fortunate enough that we built this massive program. We've had years to mature ourselves and get to the size that my team is, that my team's able to spend 6 months building a ton and improving upon all the automation. We rewrote tons of our automation just to make it more streamlined, better, comments, all of that stuff. And it is pretty crazy the amount of stuff my team did this year just to make our tools work better. When you talk to every vendor and they're like, hey, it just works out the box.
Like it does a bit. It doesn't makes a lot of noise. I mean, my team we're doing the same thing. We always recap what we've done over the course of the year, what we're planning to do moving into the next year. Although that changes a lot because I mean, you never know when someone's going to need more advisory. Like we operate in a conceptual space. So yes, there are things we want to do, but we have to shift as the business priorities shift as well. But when it comes to our tooling and the ones we're operating in, we're building our own automation to augment it because we have the conversation with the vendor to say, hey, I want to do X, Y, and Z. And oh, that's a feature request. But then they put it to a vote. It doesn't get built in. And I'm like, I have access to enough APIs to get the information I need that I can do it myself. But it takes time, which is, I mean, it's expensive. We're resource constrained, just like everyone in this industry. So we have to invest all this time in building on top of what we've purchased to actually be more effective and be able to tell the story, tie it back to business goals to say, we're getting the value and this is why we're doing all of it, and then show that.
Yep. Kurt, you know what drives me crazy about some of these vendors? And I've
A
had
lot of things.
heated, yeah, yeah. All right. So when you look at compliance, right? Compliance, most of the
Oh, here
time,
we go.
when you look at the severity, right? How many severity categories are there usually in compliance?
Well, I mean, it's everyone. So everyone's pigeonholed the whole industry into that whole like informational, low, medium, high, critical. Right.
Boom.
So
All
that's
right. All
what.
right. That's what I'm saying right there, right? So there's five technically from a risk, from most perspectives, most companies have four,
Yes.
right? I have met with so many vendors who have three: high, medium, and low. And I just look at them and I'm like, I don't, like,
I need more.
why don't you have critical? And they're like, well, why would you need critical? Wouldn't you treat a high and a critical the same severity as the
No.
same thing? I'm like, what? I mean, yeah, I want to mitigate both of them. I get that the underlying premise that you're saying is to mitigate. Everyone mitigates high and critical, right? We talked about that in the last episode and why. But at the end of the day, if you look at the compliance frameworks, right, FedRAMP and IRAP, was it the
IRAP says
CS?
a critical has to be remediated in like 48 hours.
Yeah, like for IREP, right? 48 hours. FedRAMP is you have to do some stuff, and then the Cyber Resilience Act, I believe, that's the language that's coming in Europe that we're still getting a lot of things. That one's also like 48 hours or 24 hours
Yeah, they're
for criticals.
tightening the constraints.
Yeah,
Even FedRAMP, I think, is reining it in. I think it was maybe 14 days, and it's moving to 7. I don't know, but they're all shortening the timelines.
they're all shortening the timelines. But how, so again, if this tool is supposed to just work out of the box, how do I map that to my client's framework? Guess what? I have to pull that information. I have to do automation. I have to do something, right? I have to do some kind of thing. Also, for all these vendors out here, a lot of companies are starting I would say all the frameworks in general, all the compliance frameworks that everybody has to do, the premise of most of modern at least application security and a lot of all our tools do is that compliance frameworks require us to have all this tooling to meet, XYZ reasons. Develop some kind of integration into Teams, into Slack, into email, all these things where you can turn it on and say, hey, are you an IRAP customer? Yes. Here is a direct thing that emails every critical whoever you list that says this vulnerability is in this category, so that person knows right away. Maybe you can set it to a distro or to a bunch of different
Yeah.
people. Like, we need better communication paths because that's what my team's building. We had to build literally Slack integrations to funnel, hey, this is this is all hands deck vulnerability. It is go time, right? For IRAP, it's in the category. We have 48 hours to assess this, triage it, and if we are vulnerable, fix it and deploy it. Like, all hands deck kind of thing. And you can't just have that in the platform. You need
Well,
alerting outside of the platform.
yeah, and I think like we're starting to see in the compliance space at least there's kind of the new school providers that are building compliance automation solutions. And the whole idea is that you can integrate these, you can automate your evidence collection, do it on a continuous basis. It's great. I've talked to a handful of these. I'm interested. I don't lead GRC. It's not my decision. I can only try to influence things, but it's not going to be perfect either. A lot of them are so new that they're only targeting the easier frameworks
Yep.
where it's like when you start talking about FedRAMP in the US or IRAP in Australia, like they're just like, you have to do this. And if you don't, your score is at risk. In the case of IRAP or in FedRAMP, you might not get the ATO because you can only do an exception up to a certain level. And then it's like, well, either figure it out or you're not going any further.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a real problem. And I want to say I'm not saying all this because I hate every vendor. It's just that as an industry, we have to step it up. And with what's going on around AI and I would say budget constraint teams and the acceleration of AI, the economy, all these different things, everybody's struggling out there. We need our vendors, and I know the vendors are in the same spot, right? I get that they're struggling too. I'm not saying I hate all tools, or we're saying we hate all tools. It's just these are
It's
the pain
frustrating.
points. It's pain points, and we want the teams to, or these vendors to step it up so that we can all do what we're supposed to do, which is remediate risk,
Well,
improve our general life well-beings rather than having to do so many other things.
I think it's like we tell this story a lot in how we operate as leaders, right? Of like, it's not a you versus them situation or anything. It's we all need to be successful together. So when you meet the resistance and security, people don't want to do it. They're like, why should I care? Why should I take part in that? It's we're all on the same team. If we're successful together, we make the company successful. So to the vendors out there, like if you solve these pain points, you make us successful, we can sleep better at night, and in turn you make more money, so we're all successful together.
True that. Yeah.
I don't like spending more money, but if it's worth it, I mean, by all means.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in the next kind of topic I wanted to, we're going to jump into, which links to kind of what we're already talking about, is that
Yeah,
all these tools that detect, right? And they forget reachability, forget exploitability, they forget the life cycle. We have to go purchase a tool, and in the industry, I'm seeing this explode. ASPM platforms, and I want to say ASPM platforms, so application security posture management. I want to talk about the before Gartner combined the categories. ASPMs used to be just a specific vendor that ingested vulnerability data from a bunch of different platforms and then presented that data in a single pane of glass. That's what
yeah,
that category was for a long time. Gartner, I don't understand why, merged them in there with vendors who have that same kind of capabilities, question mark, asterisk, 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 with vendors who can do scanning too, right? So there are vendors that have scanning, have an ASPM platform with a giant asterisk next to it, and then there are just the ones that just ingest data, contextualize it, create massive dashboards, create all kinds of great stuff.
yeah.
That really frustrates me that they merge those categories. It's not fair. I think it's nowhere near fair to both sides. They should be two separate categories. That's my hot take. That's my opinion. But companies are having to purchase this up. That field's exploding like crazy. I remember when I was purchasing my first, when we were going through the evaluations for the ASPM, dude, like every week another startup announced. I could see, I was tracking them. Another startup, ASPM, another startup, ASPM, another
Yeah,
startup, ASPM, and every vendor. We'd see every vendor in the major space. Guess what? Oh, we just acquired an ASPM. We acquired an
right.
ASPM.
They built it into the CSPM platforms because they're all becoming code to cloud and trying to do
Yep,
everything.
trying to do everything. Yeah,
And it's crazy. I remember the first time I heard ASPM, I think it was back in like, I don't know, 2015. And I was like, what's that? That's weird. And I looked into it and was like, well, that's actually really interesting. And it was more of the classic play of, well, ingest the data from multiple sources and paint that picture. What is the situation with your applications?
yeah,
Show me what the state of the world, much like with CSPMs, I can see the state of my cloud and the infrastructure and whatever. I can see the state of the applications running on top of that. Put the two together, I now have a much more complete picture of risk,
yeah,
or
exactly. And
potential risk, I should say, because exploitability still isn't there.
yeah. And ASPMs, I think, in terms of like security programs, product security, replaced what everybody was doing for the longest time, which is Excel sheets. We would take the data out, we would dedupe, we would correlate, right? We would use all our Excel kung fu to create a beautiful curated, list of vulnerabilities that we could talk, then we could throw it over to the devs, right? Throw it over the fence and be like, hey, go fix all these. Uh, ASPMs now today allow us to do that dynamically in a much beautiful, much more intuitive way, right? In these platforms, my favorite thing as a leader is the dashboarding. I'm able to build dashboards. I have my CISO view, right? So it's a curated 10,000 foot level view for him. I have my engineering partners, leaders, maybe their chief engineering officer or whatever title they have, product officer. There's a view for them. There's a view for the engineering team leads, and then there's a view for the actual developers. And I say that there's so many different views for the developers because that's my key stakeholder. And so I want to make sure that when they come into the platform, their needs are met, their views are there. I constantly ask for feedback and I'm constantly innovating on those dashboards. But those dashboards are like the root of I would say my program's success, because the data is now transparent. The data is right there for them. They can see from different perspectives the vulnerability status of our product. I think that gives a lot of buy-in and a lot of trust, because no longer am I hiding these things. No longer is it some mystical thing. And they also don't have to go into 20 different tools, right? They don't have to go to their
Yeah.
DAS tool. They don't have to go to their SAS tool, their SCA tool, their CSPM to grab things, the secret manager tool. They get to pull it all in one place. There's so many other things that ASPMs do. It's frustrating that the brain that we have here of an ASPM is just not built into most modern tools.
Yeah, I mean, to the point on dashboarding, like we are seeing data, seeing facts. We talked about this a bit in the last episode. Like, stating facts is one thing. Like, don't tell me I have a problem. Tell me how to solve it. To suggest something, but when you actually illustrate that data, put it in a dashboard, pictures are easier to understand. We learn to understand pictures before we learn how to read as kids. So if I can look at a picture and quickly figure out what the state of the world is and what I need to care about, that's much easier because executives all have limited time, devs have limited time, we have limited time. So you need to be able to quickly glean the information you need to go act on it. And that's what you're talking about. Like, it's tell a story very quickly, because data on its own doesn't do anything. It sits there and collects dust. It's when you build a picture and a story around it that you can actually take action on it and people understand why they need to.
Exactly. Yeah. I love that there's deduping in these platforms. There's usually correlation. I've seen
Yes.
some of these platforms where they're like, hey, these two vulnerabilities are related, and that's really cool because that's data you would never have seen or could do in yourself in any real meaningful way. There's false positive handling. You're able to handle the platforms actually understand that vulnerabilities have a life cycle. You can manage that.
Yeah.
Sure, there's so many things that they could take it 10 steps further around that. My favorite thing that I love in these platforms is they have threat intelligence, like enhancement integrations. They usually have their own built-in ones, and then they link with a bunch of different things. But the greatest part about them is that because they are just a dashboarding tool, a tool ingesting, all this data and everything, they're not doing scanning. They don't have research teams. They rely on hooking into all these other platforms. Whereas a lot of companies I talk to, they're like, hey, we have a research team and that's the only place we hook in. Right. And I'm like, but what? You're not going to go to these other paid sources and hook into them too and enrich that? Maybe they are doing that and they just don't want to tell me, but that's the communication I'm getting. And that's crazy. ASPM hooks it, their tool agnostic. They don't care where the data source is. So they're hooking into every single data source because what do they care? They understand that me as a customer, as an AppSec professional and a security professional, I want as much data in my hands in one consolidated place that I can make intuitive risk-based decisions and tune my entire thing. It's crazy. I don't know. When I talk to vendors and have that, I'm like, that's crazy, man. Bananas.
It's bananas. I'd rather have too much information than too little, right? Because I know we talk a lot about noise and the frustrations with weeding through it, but it's better than having nothing, because you don't know what you don't know at that point. And that's a bigger risk than having too much information.
Yeah. Well, and these platforms are starting to drop in like intelligent AIs that
Yeah.
can take that, because AI is really good at taking data and constructing it and condensing it and putting it in a meaningful way, right? So they're starting to do a lot of things like that I'm seeing in these platforms that amazing, right? They can take you hook into 500 different threat intelligence feeds, and they can condense that into a meaningful paragraph or a couple paragraphs, or some data points that
Quickly,
quickly
too.
too, yeah, and that they also can pull from resources. I can't wait to see a lot of these vendors starting to do, and I know a couple vendors are already POCing this. data enrichment on the detections, right? Using
Yeah.
the threat intelligence feeds to give you additional information. Maybe, hey, this is XSS. Go check out the OS cheat sheet series. Go check out this source to mitigate that. Here's some good sources that you can use to do that. These platforms are also ingesting and starting to build out like developer training. So you get XSS, and it's like, hey, here's a video on XSS on to understand what it is, learn about it, so that developers don't have to go do that research on their own. It's already right there. A lot of cool things you can do in there to help move along the vulnerability process and lifecycle.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have anything to add to that. I think the only thought that comes to mind as we talk about AI, and I know we're going to go deeper on this eventually, but I'm going to ask the question anyway: is AI what classic vulnerability management has been missing?
Yeah. I could see it. And I say that I do think that is maybe what it was missing because of we build all this automation, and automation is deterministic and AI
Yes.
is not deterministic, right?
Well,
That's I
it's
think
less deterministic,
yeah,
I
yeah,
would say.
less.
It has the flexibility built into it to be
I
more
would say
dynamic.
it's the illusion of deterministic. It is really
Yeah,
an
we're
illusion of
not
it.
quite. It doesn't have its true freedom yet.
Yeah. I feel it's very much an illusion of it. It at points it feels like maybe at points it does do it, but I think that's an okay thing to not have
Yeah.
that because I want my AI. I was reading an article today, um, and it was an interesting article around this exact thing. I believe it was Dry Run Security. They're an AI SaaS tool. They posted a blog on saying how my tools have a rule set, and that rule set, do I want that rule set to change? My code, my platform, my infrastructure, my, from every level changes every day, every week. Why wouldn't my tool change with me every day? Why do I have to wait for vendors to maybe release something monthly, right? A lot of vendors release monthly or quarterly or bi-weekly, right? And so that's only updating at periodic times with these AI related kind of platforms and things. Why aren't our tools updating just as much as we are at the same time? And that's kind of what AI is bringing to the table for vulnerability management.
Yeah, I mean, it's becoming. We're seeing this not just in vuln management. We're seeing it elsewhere too. But the AI is essentially able to build that contextual database that evolves with time as you evolve, right? So, like, if it trains on the history of how you fix things in the past, that's great. It recognizes the pattern you typically follow, but as that changes over time, it just naturally flows into the solution and it learns as you do. And that's what we need in the world today. We're resource constrained. We have too few resources. Well, here we have technology that can literally learn and adapt the same way that we do. And augmenting your team like that makes you much more effective. And you can now scale properly.
Yeah, exactly. So I think you're really hitting, the core point is that maybe that's what we've been waiting for. I don't know. For my devil advocate view on that is that I don't know. Before AI, it didn't feel like many when companies were innovating. It felt like they were still just in this detect loop, and so uh,
Yeah,
it feels like a generational leap when they should have been in step rather.
I
Sure,
agree.
maybe today now we're finally getting where we should be, but it's been quite a few years of frustration, and it's kind of sad that we had to kind of go through that to be where we are today.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's evolving. Not, it's not going to be completely addressing the issues, right? So, like, I think AI is going to be very powerful in some of the solutions we're seeing come to the market. Like Dry Run has built it into their SaaS scanner, and you have Maze AI who's doing like AI enabled vulnerability management, and it really digs into the exploitability of things. Like we've been talking about this, and Maze comes to mind because I've talked to them recently, and I know there are others entering this space. But essentially, the AI can, being more dynamic and not following that deterministic rule set, it can explore and poke at things and figure out, is this truly exploitable? And now we're whittling down, like, what do I actually need to care about? and it becomes more manageable. You're actually managing the vulnerabilities at that point and not just blindly saying, I have to fix everything that's over CVSS 4.0 like PCI says.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think when I think about AI and how the risk exposure moving towards exploitability, my mind, I actually get pretty excited about AI. If people are like, "Ew, gross," I mean, it's here to stay, and there's a lot of good about it, especially around what we can do as defenders, right? Having an AI in my WAF that's dynamically, handling the rules, analyzing the traffic, there's some cool tools out there. When I was dealing with a lot of fraud coming from a lot of
Yeah.
different countries and different things, we had to tune that ourselves. I remember one guy who's constantly on Cloudflare, like essentially modifying rules constantly, nonstop, in AWS, modifying our rules, doing all kinds of different stuff in every which way to help reduce our fraud footprint. And then we go purchase a more deterministic tool to do it for us, and that was great. But things still got through here and there. It's going to be interesting when AI really becomes fully adopted, fully integrated in like WAFs, your EDRs, firewalls, proxies.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's already kind of there to some degree, right? Like they've been using machine learning on these
yep,
things and are evolving into the more dynamic world of generative AI and such now because there's advances happening in the world. Um, but it's here to stay. There's a lot of good things about it. There's a lot of bad things about it. Attackers are using it, which signals that the only way that you're going to be able to stop it is if the defenders are doing the same.
yep,
So we're moving into a sort of, I don't know if I'd call it a new age or a new era of technology where it's like it's not so much the humans are pitted against the humans. It's literally machine against machine at this point.
yeah, yeah. Which one thing I wanted to bring up before this is we've been very pro or talking a lot of different things, but what about those teams that are in budget constraint, environments? Kind of, it's going to be a rough time. I think security in
Yeah.
general the industry maybe has to accept that we're going to have to spend a little more money. We're going to have to somehow
Yeah.
carve up that budget because there's not open source solutions for this that you can do at a scale that the enterprise needs.
It's extremely expensive to run this technology. So
Yeah.
if you're going to put it together in house, like sure, if you get open source software that can do it, you still have to have the hardware and the firepower to make it effective. So you're going to pay for it one way or another. And I mean, the world is changing. We hear about all of the infrastructure and energy and stuff that goes into running AI. It's bananas,
Yeah.
as my friend Cameron would say. Um, it's like I don't even know what I'm trying to say anymore. You got me
I-
all excited about
It's
it.
a scale. It's just a scaling issue around how
The
like the
I
teams and
think I
budgets have.
remembered.
Oh, there you go.
But it's the budget constraints, right? Like security teams, we're fighting shrinking budgets the same way everyone else is,
Yep.
because everyone wants to do more with less. I mean, business is about being profitable. If you're not profitable, you go out of business. Or if
Yep.
you're a tech company, you just IPO and sell your stock and be unprofitable for 20 years, and maybe you turn a profit finally.
Hot
I
take.
don't know. Yeah, a little bit of a hot take, but that's the world we live in. Like so many companies lose money, but are valued so high because they provide amazing solutions. They're not managing their budget very well, I guess. Um, but in any case, like if you can't afford the technology, like how do we make it accessible? Or maybe we need to reprioritize like this. Now I'm going to go into my space of a lot of what I have to do with my team and mapping technology capabilities. Maybe you got to redesign your tech stack, reprioritize the technologies you actually need to be effective in protecting your company and its assets and the customers and the data.
Yeah. It is definitely quite a conundrum for I think a lot of teams in managing the budget versus having to scale up, especially against this wave of AI attacks that we're seeing and
Yeah.
weaponization of vulnerabilities and attack vectors using AI. Oof, that was a mouthful for me there. Yeah. I think we
Yeah.
can jump more into, around AI. I kind of want to talk more about what you're seeing, and I know you've been itching to talk about it, so I'll let you kick it off.
I mean, I already mentioned Maze, right? Like I talked to them recently. I've gotten a brief demo. I've seen, and it's timely considering our conversations we're having about vulnerabilities, like reachability, exploitability. These are the things you need to care about. Compliance frameworks need to change. Stop checking boxes. Start focusing on what matters. There you go. I said it. Let's count how many episodes I've mentioned checkboxes being bad in. I lost count at this point. But anyway, we're seeing tech players come to play with the AI and make it accessible to the point that you can have agents running doing this analysis to say, do you actually have exploitable software or packages on your systems? So not only does it do the reachability analysis, it does exploitability analysis and points out the steps that it takes to get there and how it's exploiting. So you can learn how to execute these attacks from the machine. And now you know what you need to solve for. At the end, it could come out and say, well, this isn't exploitable, so it's a low or it's informational at this point. Or it could say, you know what, this is a medium technically according to CVSS, but it's exploitable on your systems, and these are the systems it's exploitable on. So you should go fix that. It's now a high.
Yeah.
Address it quickly.
Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing what we're seeing the new players in this space do with AI, and I'm really excited to see as they evolve. Because, like in the case of Maze, I know they just launched like a month ago, and I've talked to a handful of other companies that are still in stealth in this space. So I'm not going to reveal their names, um, but it's like I said, I'm really excited about where this is going because I feel like vulnerability management is finally evolving in the way we need it to make it truly manageable.
Yeah. I mean, exactly, right? We're seeing these AI vendors that essentially are being a different, like, uh, it's weird because there's the gap of detection, right? So we're seeing AI dropped in detection where we're detecting smarter, better. We're moving from, reachability, from detection to reachability to exploitability in there, just off the vendor's perspective. Then we're seeing ASPM platforms do their own AI churning of vulnerabilities from different tools, correlating, showing us impact, showing us analysis. Hey, like this vulnerability is related to these five other vulnerabilities. With that,
Yeah,
it's a higher risk, right? So we're seeing some cool things with that. And then, as you're saying, we're seeing a bunch of these other vendors who are starting to do additional contextual analysis, right? I'm excited to see some vendors. I think I've read some articles. There's a lot of different vendors that are coming that are going to start scanning our environments in the sense that they drop in, they scan your environment, they figure out all the different exposures, attacks paths. It's kind of essentially a threat modeling session, right? They threat model your entire environment. Then they correlate all the information from your tools, combine it all together, and give you those essentially attack chains, which is
yeah. I
exactly what
mean,
we need. We do that as human beings right now.
yes,
I go to you, I'm like, hey, can you get that threat model, right? All the time. Give me the threat model. Or your team comes to me and goes, hey, I need all the vulnerabilities for XYZ application or XYZ attack path. And what do? We're combining this all ourselves. Now we're
yep,
seeing AI be able to do that at scale in our platforms, no longer having to have humans be a part of that loop where the consumers at the end of it. I wonder when we'll be actually out of the loop, right? Because a lot of these things, then it becomes auto, we have to fix it, right? But now we're seeing auto remediation. Tons of tools coming out with a lot of auto remediation, auto notifying or guidance around all these different things. Are we all going to, Kurt, are we just not going to have a job?
I think we'll still have a job. It's we need, much like other industries or other lines of work, you need to change the way we operate, right? So AI fully autonomous, like it still goes off the rails occasionally. It still hallucinates. It does wild stuff.
Yeah.
And you're just like, how did that happen? You got to tune it. And in our case, like the security industry is up in arms right now because we need to build guardrails around AI. I'm like, well, they're kind of easy to defeat, and that's been proven so far. You can make an LLM go off the rails pretty easily with some malicious prompting. It's apparently works like very over 90% of the time. It's bananas. We're going to use that word again.
Bananas. Bananas. It's the
But I
best
mean,
word.
I also want to say, like, thinking back to, like, I'm excited about the technologies coming out, and it's like scanning is never going to go away, right? So some of these newer AI players, they don't do the scanning; they actually plug into your scanners and other tools. So, like, the future is bright, but it's also more costly. So if
Yes.
we want to do these things right and do it justice, yes, I think we're going to need increased budgets, or we're going to have to change the way we operate. Maybe you have less humans and more technology, which is unfortunate, but again, we work in different ways. So I don't want to say we're all going to be out of a job. We're still going to have a job, to have the expertise to make sure that things are done right and continue building the trust that needs to be built in order for these things to continue on and businesses to thrive.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely I agree with you on every point. It's going to be an interesting future. I do think there'll be a consolidation. So we're going to see all these
Yes.
companies come out where you're going to have to like buy this part and buy that part and buy this, and then you're the
Put it
one
on
that's
the ASPM, man.
yeah,
Like
and
one
you're
spot.
combining everything yourself, manually. But eventually, there's going to be the great consolidation with every technology. Every time we've seen an explosion of a new technology, that's what happens. First, we go to every springle, tree, prong, and every which way, and then eventually there's that cull. I can totally see a lot of these different vendors. You'll see platforms where you can just go to one company and they do it all.
Yeah.
So I think they'll eventually happen. But Kurt, from the other side, vulnerabilities and AI is starting to do some crazy things. I was reading an article just this morning that was on how all these capture the flag kind of platforms for AI for hacking that we go on and do some fun hacking on. All the charts are being dominated by AI hacking, tools and vendors that are showing off what they can do. That is crazy because I bet nation states, I bet, cyber criminals are all starting to do the same thing, build something out to help weaponize their attack and be much more effective at it. I'm terrified for the phishing campaigns. You could target
Um,
somebody, right? And before that was something you had to do yourself. With AI, you can be like, "Hey, send five, create 500 different versions of this in this
it's already
language."
happening.
Yeah, it's already happening, right? Crazy.
I talked to my buddy who runs a SOC, Security Operations Center, yesterday about some of the phishing campaigns we're seeing in the world today, and how it's absolutely insane how realistic these emails and messages are that are going out, to the point that he told me, he's like, there have been multiple VIPs who have had their passwords compromised because it was so realistic in a short amount of time. And it's just like, that's the world we live in now. Because I mean, while we're all excited in keeping ourselves honest and using the technology for good, so to speak, you have our counterparts in the underworld who are using the same technology for bad. And it's all about monetization or doing damage in some cases.
Yeah, yeah, it's very kind of scary in that perspective, and we're seeing AI essentially find all these new vulnerabilities.
Yep.
There's a lot of AI pen testing coming out. There's a lot of talks around that. I'm wondering if AI pen testing will replace DAS tools due to the depth and breadth and probably cost that they can generate. They might be just as or I would say just as much for an vendor, and you're probably outperform a DAS tool. A lot of
Yeah.
DAS vendors I see are scrambling to build their own AI XYZ in there.
Pivoting.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
like
Especially around.
AWS just released the security agent
Yep.
where it's got a component where it'll scan your code. It'll also pen test continuously if you wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a big problem. And then we have AI coming in and writing secure code, but we also have AI trying to secure that code, find vulnerabilities. It is
Creating vulnerability.
creating vulnerabilities, finding vulnerabilities, fixing vulnerabilities. It is a crazy time
It
for
does it
AI.
all.
Yeah, it 100% does. And just like everything, do everything, compliance, right? I know we've been alluding to this, but we are seeing compliance be a major factor around vulnerabilities. And I would say for me, it's a major contention point. It's one of the most frustrating things I have around vulnerabilities. Kurt, how do you feel about compliance when we talk about vulnerabilities? One word.
Every
One
everyone's
word.
like, well, it's bananas.
Bananas. I knew it.
It's the word of the day, man. Like, this
Yeah.
is bananas. Like, compliance needs to change. Like, it is behind. Like, we all know how I feel. Compliance is great. It has a place in the world. I'll lead with that. I'm not hating on all of the wonderful GRC folks of the world. I love the GRC people I work with, but it's time to evolve. GRC automation, adopt it. Learn to love it. You don't have enough time in your life to do your job. Automation is king. Do it. AI, if you can augment it with AI, absolutely. But these goofy frameworks need to change their freaking rules to stop saying fix everything above a 4.0 if you're PCI, or fix every critical within 48 hours. I'm looking at you, Australia. And you need to start focusing on real risk. And real risk in the world today is something that's truly exploitable.
Yeah.
Now, do we have all of the technology tools in the shed to identify this? Because now someone's going to be like, if we make the rules that you have to fix everything that's exploitable, how do you determine what's exploitable? Now I got to go buy another tool, maybe 2 or 3 tools, and I
Yeah.
don't have money for that. So what do I do? Like, there is no winning here.
No.
So no matter what rule you set, somebody is going to get hurt. And I mean, that's the nature of evolution in this business, unfortunately, is we all have to change as the technology changes, as the attackers adopt new tactics and techniques. And this is the way we're headed. There's too many vulnerabilities. We have to pare that down to be manageable. How do we do that? It's exploitability.
Yeah.
The frameworks need to start targeting that imminently.
Exploitability with a risk-based approach, right? It needs
Yes.
to say, like, I really want these frameworks all to say you have established a risk-based criteria to classifying severity or risk, right?
Yeah.
So you need to have
I
some kind of
document
method.
it and then follow it.
Yeah, some kind of methodology or process. The other thing is that in the industry, I have not seen a correlation or everybody coming together to say, hey, this is how you classify quote unquote risk from XYZ tools. I do think there is some kind of pattern or way. There's so many smart people out there that there's got to be some kind of proper framework that we all agree upon or get close to. Maybe you have a couple different versions of it, but I would really like to see the industry come together and say, hey, like, you take XYZ vulnerabilities, you take your threat graph, you take the position where the asset's at, and then it comes all together. And then the adoption of these, applying risk-based approaches to your vulnerabilities becomes the standard in all these compliance
Yeah.
frameworks. It says it so that people right off the bat are immediately thinking pragmatically about their vulnerabilities rather than
Don't.
just, hey, it's got a CVSS score. That's what we have to fix. We got to move out of that direction, and these compliance frameworks need to stop saying CVSS scores. They need to stop pivoting off keywords and pivot more towards classified risk that has been triaged or reviewed and improved upon or grounded in a operational risk way. I don't know. There's somebody else there who can phrase it better than me.
Well, what I hear Cameron saying is we don't want to be checking boxes. We want to actually be mitigating real risk, because at the end of the day, that's the goal. If you're securing systems, technology, companies, what have you, like, think about physical security. You're preventing unauthorized entities from entering a building or whatever it may be. Cybersecurity is the digital version of that. And so, what are we trying to do? We're trying to prevent or mitigate real risks to our technology, our business, our data, et cetera. So that's what we need to focus on. We need to stop saying, I'm doing this because the compliance says so. We need to instead be saying, I'm doing this to solve a real problem or mitigate such and such risks, and have that be the driver of the entire program, not even just vulnerability management, but everything.
Exactly. So, I mean, looking forward in the years right to come, what I'm expecting to see is companies and vendors and whatever which way we're moving away from detect, from reachability. I can't wait for people to stop saying reachability, and what we move to is exploitability and maybe even exposure, like business exposure, grounding that into real risk that is communicated to the business to enable success rather than fear. Back to the conversation of part one.
No FUD.
No FUD, no, stop driving fear. Our job is to be a business enabler, and that's what our customers
Yes.
expect from us, is that we are enabling the business by being secure, keeping that mentality. Um, I don't care what else you got.
I think that's a really good point to wrap up on, actually, because every CISO that I have talked to recently has made that same point of security is a business enabler. Stop with the fear, stop with the uncertainty, stop with the doubt. It's about enabling the business and protecting the business. Because if you do that and you do it successfully, we're all successful together. We all win.
Exactly. And the future of vulnerability management and vulnerabilities in general, I think, is where we have to pivot away from this mentality, from the compliance frameworks, from all the different toolings of fixing more to fixing the right things and
Yes.
having the data to prove why. Yeah.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Any last comments, grind your gears comments, Kurt?
No, I think you just kind of like quelled the madness right there. Like I feel calm after that. I'm like the future is very bright. Now let's go get after it.
Definitely. I'm excited personally. As much as I'm frustrated with everything, that there's so much interesting and fun things. I can't stop reading, I can't stop learning. There's so many cool vendors, there's so many companies out there that are innovating in just the right way. So I think for our industry, for customers, for end users, stakeholders, people who just use the products and don't even think about cybersecurity, things are going to get more secure. As much as it sounds like they aren't, things are getting better. They're always getting better. We're always doing better out there. Um, Keep a positive mindset. And I mean, this is Coffee, Chaos, and ProdSec. Give us a smash, thumbs up, follow us, 5 stars, subscribe. Yeah, I don't know. Kurt, anything else?
Bananas.
Bananas. Thank you for joining us.